unemployed man. I'm sick and tired of seeing these programmes and newspaper reports. And there was one on 2 or 3 weeks ago where I had these crowd of lads from Liverpool, and this lord or somebody from a gentry was talking to him, and they said, "What are you talking about? We've just bought your ale." You know. Now that's, again, you know, that gets up my throat, you know, because being unemployed, maybe it's just because I'm unemployed for the first time, and it's all foreign to me, but I wouldn't go out to the pub. And I wouldn't think, if this guy was to talk to me, I'd tell him to get lost, you know, because there's not 900,000 of us in the last 4 years, you know, who have all of a sudden became lazy so-and-sos. Or, you know, we've all got jobs in the fiddle. That's completely false.
For over a year, the number of people out of work has been more than 1 million, and the government expects the figure to remain high. Yet Labour Party and trade union protest has been muted. Tonight, World in Action discloses the results of 2 inquiries which show that people are worried about unemployment and that Labour MPs are reading the public mood wrong. In the 1930s, a lot of people cared. Unemployment hit 1/5 of the population and whole towns marched in protest. Ever since then, the fear of unemployment has governed politicians' actions. All governments have assumed that to let the figures rise was the sure way to lose the next election.
For over 20 years, I was a candidate or member for a constituency of the North East Coast. Nothing can ever blot from my memory the terrible tragedy of unemployment, mass unemployment, which we saw at that time. And I am determined that so long as I am responsible, this shall never happen again.
5 years ago, when unemployment neared 1 million, the T.U.C. led a mass march on Parliament. Mr. Edward Heath's government, in its celebrated U-turn, reversed its economic policy. Why? Because of unemployment. The T.U.C. no longer marches now Mr. Callaghan is in power. He recently refused to talk to protesters in one unemployment black spot.
Come and have a talk with us. Why not? We're the people that are unemployed. We're the ones that are bloody suffering.
Both he and the Chancellor have made it clear that despite high unemployment, they will not change their economic policy. Mr. Callaghan, though, can't so easily ignore the T.U.C., on whom his whole economic policy depends.
I mean, how long can the social contract survive 1.5 million unemployed?
The social contract is alive and kicking, and we're not talking about, it dying or anything like that. What we're all agreed on is keeping it alive, and I'm quite sure that Congress next week will endorse that view, that our aim is to make it survive.
Did the Prime Minister give the impression that unemployment has peaked now?
Well, this is a view that he takes. We're not absolutely convinced, but he's telling us that he thinks it will be going down from now till the end of the year and beyond, in particular school leavers. And we're saying it had better.
At the T.U.C. conference later in Brighton, it was obvious that union leaders were embarrassed and worried about the figures. But even in the unemployment debate, they put the social contract first.
Congress finds the present level of unemployment totally unacceptable. That's the first sentence of Composite 8, which I'm moving, and we never thought that there would come a time where we had to make such a statement within the life of a Labour government. We are not asking the government for a reversal or a modification of its present economic strategy, based as it is on a recognition that if Britain is to get out of her undoubted economic ills, she can only do it on the basis of efficient and manufacturing industries. Indeed, we are asking for a more sustained and vigorous implementation of that economic strategy.
The Prime Minister knows it, and he told us last Wednesday that he finds no comfort in leading a government presiding over 1.5 million jobless. And anybody who paints a picture of the cabinet glorying or rejoicing in unemployment, having available measures it could take and delighting in not taking those measures, is politically naive or worse.
The only loud voice raised against unemployment during Congress was from a small fringe group on the far left.
Right, you should all know what it's about. You know what the Tribune group is. The Booth, the Minister of Employment, speaking here tonight. So you've got 6 from each group going down in advance to give him our fraternal messages and to really show him really what we mean when we get down there. Tommy will be taking you down. Before you go down, I want you to stay behind and help up with the catering and cleaning up before you go.
And we want you to react when we say so, because what we'll do, we'll plan the intervention to make the maximum effect when Booth speaks. Because there's one or two, they're professional politicians. They'll be trying to handle us, and they'll be giving us all kinds of promises to cool us down. They'll try to cool it. And the man we want really is Booth.
Now I call upon a former data convener, somebody who has lost his job on more than one occasion for organising trade unions, someone who has direct access and imposes direct pressure on the forces within our government who would seek to adopt the orthodox course. I call upon a socialist employment minister, Albert Booth.
The Labour movement is now striving to implement one of the most ambitious manifestos which has been created within the whole of its history. And certainly, in my opinion, the best manifesto this movement has had since 1945.
The last meeting that was killed that I attended by chanting like that was killed by the National Front. I am now asking you to either shut up, I'm asking you especially, comrade, to either shut up or to leave.
I find it personally repugnant that when we are seeking to address ourselves to the problem of unemployment, that there are those who would impute motives to people who have fought against unemployment and the policies that produce it throughout their working and political lives, by those who are not prepared to do anything more than to shout abuse.
Would you clear the room as quickly as possible, please?
The interrupters managed to break up the meeting of the left-wing Tribune group, but they had ambitions to make unemployment the central issue of the conference, and in this they failed. Next day, one popular paper at least made the story front-page news. But a week earlier, the papers treated what was perhaps the most dramatic event concerning unemployment since the war, the arrival of 1.5 million on the dole, in a more cavalier way. All 4 popular papers thought other stories more important. The Express led with the drought and the problems of the water shortage. So did the Mail, and so did the Sun. And the Mirror informed us about the monster who raped Miss X. The 1.5 million unemployed were relegated to page 2. Geoffrey Goodman, Mirror assistant editor.
Do you think your readers, the man on the street, is interested in unemployment anymore?
Oh, I think they're interested in unemployment, but I fear less so than they were. I think that people have become accustomed to a higher level, and of course the tendency is for people in work to think that they are somehow protected, inured against the problem, and those people out of work are some kind of special breed.
So as a newspaper story, it isn't any good, really?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not any good. I think one has now got to evaluate the unemployment story with other competing stories. It's no longer the dramatic shock, sensational story that it was a few years ago.
So, has the heat gone out of unemployment as a political issue? It's the job of Labour MPs to be ultra-sensitive to popular feelings and to warn the government if people are turning against them. What sort of pressure are Labour MPs coming under from their constituents? We conducted a telephone poll and spoke to over half the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Do you think unemployment is the political issue it was a few years ago? 36 said it was, 118 said it wasn't.
Which means that roughly 3/4 of the MPs thought that it wasn't the issue it was a few years ago.
In your constituency, are you finding as much pressure as you would expect about the high level of unemployment?
As much as expected, 43, less than expected, 118.
The cushioning effect of state benefits was cited by many MPs as the explanation.
Unfortunately, I believe, tragically, people have become to accept more willingly the level of 1 million plus unemployed. This has been going on for some time. I think perhaps we're all guilty of that, not only newspapers, not only television. Everybody in the country perhaps is guilty of the fact that they are now accepting too readily that level of unemployment.
Why do you think that change has occurred?
I think partly it's due to having lived with a high level for some time. Partly it's because having gone through a period of very high inflation, chronic inflation, and a great degree of comparative affluence, those people who are unemployed are in almost enclosed communities. The spread of unemployment is only now beginning to bite into the country as a whole. Hitherto, even when it reached the 1 million mark, those people who were in work tended to have a pretty cynical and sceptical view of those people who are out of work because it was patchy. I think now it's reached 1.5 million. We're going to see a change in that attitude, but all the research that I have seen in the last 6 months lead me to believe that the country as a whole have too readily accepted, with a degree of apathy, the levels of unemployment we're now experiencing.
Are the MPs and newspapermen right? World in Action decided to find out. We commissioned Marketing and Opinion Research International to question a representative sample of people throughout Britain. Some of the MPs had said that the people don't care because unemployment is something which always hits somebody else. The first surprise of our poll, therefore, was that so many people had experience of unemployment.
Have you or any member of your family been unemployed for a period of a week or more in the last 2 years?
24% said yes.
1 in 4 of the population has either been out of work themselves or seen members of their immediate family out of work.
How likely do you think it is that you or someone in your family will be unemployed at any time during the next year or two? Is it very likely, quite likely, not very likely, not at all likely?
27% think it either very likely or quite likely.
In other words, over 1/4 of those interviewed thought that they or a close relative might well become unemployed soon. In the 1930s, when unemployment settled down at nearly 3 million, some towns had as much as 80% of their workforce unemployed. Skelmersdale, Newtown, is not as bad as that. Unemployment is roughly 18%. Nevertheless, it is one of the worst hit towns in England. To find out just how downcast people were about it, we went to Skelmersdale. We spoke first to 2 shop stewards, engineering workers Dennis Brooks and John McKenna.
Dennis, do you come across many unemployed people?
Every day of the week.
And people who've been unemployed a long time?
Well, I know people who've been out of work now for 2 and 3 years. They just can't get work at all.
That's ridiculous. They can't be looking, surely.
Well, of course they are. They're going down the dole every, once, twice, 3 times a week looking for work. There's just no jobs available at the moment.
See them out and about, shopping parades, various, play football, meeting them all the time. The chins are touching the floor now, they just don't know where to look.
And they're having a good time, are they, or not?
Oh, no, they're having a good time going out of town trying to get jobs. They're the ones who are travelling. People in Skem have got to travel out of town. This is what they get when they go down the dole. So you're willing to travel. There's no working here for you, lad. That's the answer they get. And that's a bad, there's something wrong somewhere.
But it's not just in Skelmersdale, it's all over, it's, Liverpool, Skelmersdale, Kirby, everywhere. Every area you can think of in this particular area,
But you've read all the stories in the papers, haven't you, about scroungers and people on the dole? And
it's rubbish, load of crap.
Yeah. Let's get something in the paper about the people who are feeling it, the people who are getting put into hospital, depressed states and all this, people who can't cope, the unmarried mother, things like that, the chap with about 5 kiddies, the lad who leaves school at 15,
Many people nowadays say that unemployment is no hardship. What do the public as a whole think?
How unpleasant do you think it is to be unemployed these days? Is it very unpleasant, fairly unpleasant, not very unpleasant, or not at all unpleasant?
78% thought it very unpleasant or fairly unpleasant.
Unemployed people interviewed by our pollsters said that the worst things about being out of work were making ends meet and boredom. In Skelmersdale, we talked to some unemployed teenagers.
Have many of your schoolmates, Barry, have many of your schoolmates got jobs?
There's a lot of them, yeah. But, you know, they're working. Fair enough, they've stuck a job. They've got the right job.
You've thrown some jobs up, have you?
One or two, you know. One, at least, you know. Just one.
Wasn't that a mistake, looking back on it?
It was a mistake, yeah. But, you know, there's nothing you can do about it now. We're in this situation, you know. All we're interested in now is getting a job.
Have any of the rest of you thrown up jobs? Has anybody else had a job that they've thrown up?
I had one in Clonus, you know, working with fiberglass. But I had to pack that in after 2 days because I was allergic to fiberglass.
Yeah.
So I had to throw that one out, like.
It wasn't a very attractive job?
No.
So there are some jobs that you wouldn't take, I mean...
Well, at the moment now, I'd go back. I'd do anything now.
You'd go back to that same job?
Yeah.
Well, even though you're allergic?
Yeah.
How are you allergic?
I just break out in rashes and big lumps all over me.
And you still go back to that?
Right now, I would, yeah.
I can see if it goes on, it's going to be very painful. But right now, none of you look really unhappy. I mean, you're all quite lively and you look well-dressed.
Yeah, but what we look and what we are is two different things, you know. You don't know what's going on inside our minds, like, do you?
Well, what is going on inside?
The same as what I told you, you know, we're all disappointed, like, you know. We're not happy. We want to work, you know. If somebody come up to me and said, you know, you take my job, I'll go on the door.
Are you going to turn nasty? Is that what you mean?
Well, it looks that way, you know. Do you blame us?
I've done my part. I went out and looked for jobs. You know, every factory in Scotland I've been to. I've been as far as Scotland. I've been as far as Birmingham, Manchester, Cheshire, Ellesmere Port. You know, I'm prepared to go anywhere for work.
Have you had any offers you've turned down?
No. I've not been accepted yet. You know. We've gave this matter great consideration, but I'm sorry. You're not suitable.
You went on a government training scheme.
Yeah.
And was that useful to you or not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Great. Marvellous. But as I say, since coming out of it, the unemployment has gone up so much, and there's so many skilled men on the job. Union policy being what it is, management policy being what it is, they want the tradesmen first.
So it was marvellous, except that you can't get a job with it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to press this too hard, but you're obviously not living below the breadline, are you? You've got a colour television and you're
I worked 7 12-hour shifts for 2 years to pay for that. I didn't ask you to come up and give me social security benefits to pay for that. I bought that television 3 years ago, and I worked 7 12-hour shifts for 18 months to pay for what I've got. I didn't ask you to come and pay for it. I didn't go to the social security and ask to pay for it. I paid for that by my work, the same as I paid for my carpet and my 3-piece suite. I went into debt for these things, and I paid it off, and I didn't ask anybody for any money.
Frank Lacey worked overtime for his luxuries. Some people get them another way. They accept redundancy in return for a golden handshake.
Oh, one of the strongest feelings that we have amongst ourselves, and we've discussed this quite often, is the voluntary redundancy scheme.
Yeah.
We don't think it's right and proper for anybody to be able to sell the jobs.
And is that what's happening?
Oh, in this area, quite predominant, yes.
How do you mean, sell the jobs?
Well, it means it's a case that we as branch officers get mandates, and we have had mandates to apply for a voluntary redundancy scheme.
But people actually want to get out so that they get a golden handshake.
You get a golden handshake, which could probably be the equivalent to £2,000 to £3,000.
Somebody has to say it, and I suppose it's got to be said. In here, we managed to save every job in this plant ourselves. We had great help from our own paid officials, and indeed through the Divisional Council and the Executive Council. But we still had people who wanted to take the golden handshake, and as my colleagues refer to it, the fast buck.
Did that surprise you?
Yes, it did.
You were fighting a tough battle thinking that everybody was with you, and then suddenly you found they weren't.
To sustain the people in work, yes, indeed.
Didn't they tell you that beforehand? Why?
No.
Why not?
Well, you know, there's no reason. You know, a person's only got to open their mouth and spread this, that there's a possibility of getting £2,000 or £3,000 by accepting redundancies, and then it spreads.
I think there should be an incentive for the man to come to work. I believe a lot of men want to come to work, but it doesn't pay them to.
I think a lot of people watching this programme will be absolutely astonished to hear you, as union shop stewards, actually saying that. Do you think that's a common belief amongst a lot of people in the trade union movement?
We attend delegations, we attend meetings, we meet delegates from other factories, and this is a common sense of view at the moment.
The issue of voluntary redundancy was taken up at the 174 Club, a working man's club, though today many of the men in it are out of work. This morning we talked to union shop stewards who said that there were a lot of people around this area who were rushing for redundancy because they felt that it was better. That's what they said.
Yeah, well, I'll agree with that. In Scammerdale, I will agree with that.
That's to be a foolish person that takes redundancy money.
You think that's true, though?
In Scammerdale.
Let the man speak, and then we...
I will agree with that, because there's people... Now, I'm an ex-door worker. Now, there's people... When they come up, they go with a redundancy. And as a body of people, we say now, we will not accept them redundancies, which is, we want people to work. But there's people that, when they put a voluntary list up, people will jump at that. Because those people, they don't stop and think.
The same people are licking their wounds now.
They don't stop and think what they're doing.
The same people are licking their wounds.
When it comes up and they say, OK, and you get that stop, they turn around, and when it's given to them, 3 months or 4 months later, they turn around and said, why did I do it?
And you know people like that?
Yes, I do, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The same people are now licking the wounds.
So unemployment does hurt. The public, far from being indifferent, are concerned. Does this have lessons for the trade unions, implications for the social contract? At the T.U.C. conference, we discussed this with two members of the General Council, David Basnett of the General Municipal Workers and Ken Gill of the Engineering Workers Union.
My view is that while it's necessary that the two wings of the movement try to work together, you cannot have any arrangement which involves unemployment at the sort of level it is now and at the sort of level it was a year ago when it was 1 million. And I remember my union fighting the Tory government when we had unemployment at the level of 600,000. And I believe if the fight had taken place quite clearly, that is, if the trade union movement had said right from the very beginning, we will not tolerate this level of unemployment and it jeopardizes the so-called contract or anything else, we would have had a different attitude. I'm not suggesting everybody's a bunch of crooks. I mean, it's not like that. But what does happen is the concern to ensure that the Labour Party remains in government, because the alternative is a truly horrifying one. Mrs. Thatcher would put a scythe through industry, I believe. That concern is being taken advantage of by the present Labour government. I think that there is almost a cynical disregard of the views of the T.U.C. because they feel that our support is guaranteed. That's my view.
No, I don't agree with that, and again, I must refer back to what I said before, that had Ken been at the meeting at number 10 Downing Street before he came here, he would have known the government is as concerned with that. The problem is not concern, the problem is doing something about it and getting these measures implemented.
But if the government can't bring unemployment down, the consequences for both parties to the social contract, the government and the unions, look grim. Our interviewers asked the public,
who do you blame for Britain's current unemployment situation?
The electorate's answers were unequivocal. Not many blame private investors or capitalists. Not many blame management and employers. Not very many blamed the international and world situation. Most people went for three distinct groups. Without any prompting, they blamed
17% workers and workforce, 23% trade unions and trade union leaders, 28% the government and the Labour Party,